Hello everyone, today we'll be doing an in-depth review of Parktown residences. Now the developers have recently announced the estimated starting price for each bedroom type. So in this video, we'll be going through the range of what you can expect for different facings as well as high and lower floors. Now in addition, we'll be covering what you need to be concerned about and looking out for if you're considering this development. Now Parktown has many layouts, so this video will be quite long. It's crucial you watch the first 10 to 15 minutes to understand the pricing strategy, and then you can hop on over to the timestamps and look at the size you are interested in. Now before we get started, if you enjoy analysis videos like this, do subscribe to this channel for more videos, and let's get into it. Now Parktown is located in the up and coming part of Tampines, which is Tampines North. Now you can see it's located right in the middle and will be the heart of this area, being connected to the upcoming Tampines North MRT, which is part of the Cross Island Line. Now surrounding it, you have several BTO projects around, as well as the Park Connector and several land plots that have yet to be built. Now going into the details of the development, this will be a huge development of 1,193 units. Now this is built by a consortium of CapitaLand, UOL, as well as Singapore Land Group, which you might know from previous projects like Pine Tree Hill. Now looking at this development, the TOP is expected for 2028. Now something to keep in mind is that for integrated developments, sometimes they might take a bit longer because there's also the mall component. But for this part, there's really no way for us to know, but you want to buffer a bit. Now in addition, you're going to have 961 car park lots, which I think is a great number in ratio to 1,100 units, making it about 80%. Definitely, you will not be short of parking. Now, of course, this is really the top of the town because it's an integrated development, which is very rare to come by in the east. So for the mall component that will be below the development, you're going to have a hawker center as well as retail commercial space, which we'll get into a bit more later on. Now, looking into the unit types, you'll be able to get a 1+ study all the way to a 5-bedroom over here. Now, if you look at the unit mix, the one you're going to notice that has the biggest number is the 2 bedrooms. Now let's look at the site plan. So I think it's really true to its name of Parktown. You can really see the park theme throughout the development, and it will be split into Park West, which is shown here on the left, and then Park East on the right. Now it is surrounded by HDBs as we saw earlier. So my feeling is that the premium view is going to be Park East between the two and all the internal facing. Now why do I think Park East will be the most expensive? That's because if you look at the distance between the blocks compared to Park West, you're going to have a longer unblocked view, which will make it feel more open. Now on the outside, you're going to have HDBs on both sides over here, and in front here you have an empty plot which may potentially be a high-rise in the future, and on this side is another plot that may be a school. So which one should you go for? We'll talk about that a bit later on what you should be prioritizing depending on the bedroom type. Now, another place that is internal facing that I feel we might be able to get a bit of a cheaper price will be the units facing the internal walkway. And that's because if you can see, the blocks are a bit closer. So first, let's get into the impact of the mall on the pricing, because of course this is an integrated development. Now there are two factors we need to think about when thinking if the integrated factor is really going to play into the resale value. Now the first is, who is the manager of this mall? So of course, CapitaLand has a hand in this, and we know them from other huge malls like Ion, Jewel, Sengkang Grand. Why is this important? Now, if you're someone that is reputable like CapitaLand managing your tenants, this means you're going to have a very diverse tenant pool. Now, for CapitaLand, because they have other malls, they can tap on the good brands they have there and bring in a good mix over here. For them, their priority is going to be have a good retail experience in their mall. Now, for different type of integrated where the units are actually sold out, as in the commercial units are actually sold to private owners, what's going to be the priority of these owners? Now, they're going to rent to the highest rental, the person that's willing to pay the most rent. Their priority is not going to be, do the people that come to this mall have a good experience? So when you have a big developer like CapitaLand managing your units, you know that the shops there will be good. Now, the second factor you want to consider is the size of the mall. Now, before we go into the size, just take a beat and think about the first integrated development that comes to your mind. Now, maybe something like Watertown at Punggol or North Park at Yishun. Now, likely in your head, they are huge developments. Now, the size is very important when it comes to the mall component of this development. So for the size of Parktown, it's going to be about 13,600 square meters. So the closest to that we've recently seen, if you have been, is Sengkang Grand Mall. Now, coming in close would be something like Woodleigh Mall. But to be honest, it's not necessarily the biggest in comparison to many others that you can see listed here. So in my opinion, it has a double-edged sword in a way. So for them, they have a great developer managing it, but the mall is also a bit on the smaller side. So when it comes to looking at the prices of the units later on, I wouldn't think of it so much as I should pay higher because it's integrated. I will still look at how fair the prices are without the integrated factor. And the integrated mall, I will just see more of as a bonus. So going into the impact of nearby ECs. Now, the question I keep getting from a lot of buyers on the ground is, of course, there is another launch coming nearby, which is Orel, a EC. How is that going to affect the future resale EC price? So just to show you, the location of Orel is actually over here. Now, the very important thing to understand before we go into the resale aspect is that an EC when you buy at launch and a new condo when you buy at launch are two completely different products. Now, they have very different criteria. So for example, if you buy an EC, you have 3 years of construction, and then after that, you have to serve 5-year MOP before you can even enter the secondary market. That is 8 years. Now for Parktown, the minute you buy, your 3 years start and you can sell after that. And of course, if you want to get Orel, it's still under the MSR loan system because it is HDB subsidized versus Parktown, which will be under TDSR as a private development. And of course, you also have other criteria that you need to fulfill, just like when you apply for a BTO and there'll be income ceiling, etc. Now, the point of telling you this is if you look at the two lists, the people that are eligible for one are likely not going to be eligible for the other. So they are two completely different products, and we should look at them in individuality. Now, how about the exit strategy? Because it is true that when Orel MOPs, they're going to bring in a lot of 3 and 4 bidders into the market of this area. Now, if you're looking at Parktown, it is all about planning your exit timing. So what do I mean by that? Now, Parktown, if it is ready in 3 years' time, you have a couple of years before Orel hits MOP. So if you do want to sell early, you want to sell before they hit MOP and that concentration of units come into the market. Otherwise, you wait. You wait for the few months after the MOP where all the owners that want to sell have sold, then you enter the market. The key is to avoid that concentration of units coming up. Now, how about the pricing? Now, to me, I don't feel the pricing will be conflicted. Now, why do I say that? Imagine you are someone going to buy Orel resale in the future. You have the idea of what Parktown price is next door. Are you going to be willing to pay for a resale EC what the private condo next door is selling? Definitely not. So in your head as a resale EC buyer, you're going to have that price cap psychologically in your mind already. Although I don't feel like there will really be an overlap in terms of pricing for the two. Moving on, what we want to consider is a change in the developer's behavior post-harmonization. So as with harmonization, we know that there is now certain areas they cannot include into the overall square feet of a unit when selling. But how has this impacted the way they price a unit as well as the way they size a unit? So on the ground, we notice there are two trends. Let's look at the first. Now the first, let's use Lentor as an example. Now with Lentor, before harmonization, we saw that the average size of a 3-bedroom starting is about 900 plus square feet. And notice the quantum is about 1.8 to 1.9 starting. Now, post-harmonization, we had Lentor mentioned as the first, and if you notice the size, it is a lot smaller, starting at 786 square feet. And the quantum is also lower at 1.7. But notice that the PSF is actually a lot higher and went all the way to 2450, breaking the record at Lentor. So this is the first trend that we see, which is developers build smaller but with a higher PSF and more. Now let's look at the second trend. So now let's look at Mount Sinai area where we have Pine Tree Hill. So similarly, this is before harmonization and the 3-bedroom started at 969 square feet. Now quantum was at about 2.17 with PSF 2200. Now post harmonization, we had the recently launched Nava Grove. Now, if you look at the size, it is very, very close to Pine Tree, which is not harmonized. And if you look at the quantum and the PSF, it is also very close. So this is the second pattern that we're seeing, which is they make the units bigger, closer to before harmonization units, but they price it at a lower PSF. Because both ways, they need to end up with the same break-even and quantum. So these are the two strategies we see, which is smaller, higher PSF, or bigger but lower PSF. Now, why is this important for us to know? Now, moving forward, most of our launches will be harmonized. But by looking at the size of the average of units, we can predict how the developers might price the unit. Which brings us to Parktown. Now, for Parktown, compared to the newer TOP project that is not harmonized, Treasure at Tampines, let's look at the size. So for Parktown, on average, the 2-bedroom, we have about 592 all the way to 700 plus. Now, if you compare to Treasures at Tampines, you'll notice that it is actually bigger than Treasures, even though Treasures is not harmonized. Now, same thing for the 3-bedroom starting at 900 plus, whereas for Treasures, you start at 800 plus. So in this case, we see that the developers for Parktown actually build it bigger, which means that we might see a smaller range in terms of how high the PSF goes. So let's look at the pricing strategy of this developer. So in addition to understanding how they might price with the size of the unit, we want to see historically how this developer has priced for other developments, because usually they wouldn't really stray too much to how they have done it before. So for this, we look at Botanic at Bartley, which was a mid-rise development by UOL previously. So we want to see what are the difference in premium for the premium facing versus less premium facing, as well as high floor to low floor. So we'll be looking at stack 36 and 43, which faces the pool, as well as for the road facing one, we'll be looking at stack 29 over here. So let's look at the price differences and the premium. So first we have the road facing, which is stack 29 versus the pool facing, which is stack 36. So we can see that for the high floors, 17th floor versus 17th floor is about a 5.2%. Now versus the low floors of the pool facing and the road facing, it is 4%. Now let's look at stack 29 versus stack 43 also, which is the one with the longer pool view. You can see that it is 5.8 for higher floors, and then for lower floors it's 4.5%. So on average, we see that the percentage between the best view as well as the less desirable one is about 5% plus. Now let's see how the premium is like for low floors and high floors. So for low floors versus high floor, now road facing one, we have 2nd floor and then 17th floor at 6.8%. So that means about 4,000 plus per floor jump. Now let's look at the pool facing, which is 8.2% for the premium, and then we see per floor is about 5,066. So why is this important for us to know when it comes to Parktown? Now, if the developer does price similarly for this as they did with Botanic, this means that, let's say for the different facing we saw on average, it was about 5% plus. Okay, let's put 5.5%. And then if we take the difference from the highest and lowest floor, it was about 8.2%. So this brings us to around 14%. Which is likely very close to the gap we will see for the worst facing in Parktown low floor versus the best facing in Parktown by high floor. So let's look at the plan for Parktown. So you can see over here, because it is also a bit lower compared to Botanic and Bartley, so we want to basically shorten the range, so it brings it to about 13%. So from our prediction, we feel that for the lowest floor road facing in Parktown versus the highest floor facing somewhere like Park East, it will be about 13%. And this is the number we are going to use to estimate how far the range goes based off the starting price that the developer has given us. So let's get into the unit types. Now we have the 5 bedrooms. So for 5 bedrooms, we have just one layout. So for this layout, it is going to be 1,679 square feet. So first, let's look at what the layout consists of. So you have 5 good sized bedrooms, all can at least fit a queen size with at least your master fitting a king. There is also a junior suite, so there's a toilet that connects over here. Now, I do really like their walk-in wardrobe because it's tucked in the corner over here, so it really feels like a proper walk-in wardrobe. Now, for the kitchen area, it's a good big size also, where you have a house shelter and wash closet, and the living room is quite wide and comfortable. Now, if you have seen Now, before we get into that, this will mainly be internal facing. So we do know that it will be facing Park East, where you get the good views with just 22 units. Now, again, if you have seen my previous videos for other developments, you know that for 5 bedrooms, I do prefer layouts that come with a private lift and a landscape layout. But in the case of this being in Tampines, I feel that it actually works for the area based on what I've seen from resale buyers looking at 5 bedroom here. Now, the priority when I come to Tampines is to have that family lifestyle. Now, space is going to be the number one thing I look at. I want more space for my family. Now, versus if I go somewhere like Holland Village, where I want more privacy, more exclusivity. I don't really want to see my neighbors every day when I leave my house. So maybe private lift and a landscape layout is much more beneficial there. But for a family lifestyle in Tampines, a 5 bedroom, I feel that this layout actually works better for the area. Now let's look at the size, rather the price. So the developer is giving us the starting price at 2,251 per square foot. So that brings the starting price at 3.779. Now, if I estimate the 13% jump that we talked about earlier, this would bring the price range all the way to 2,550. Now, in my opinion, I don't feel that for the 5 bedroom, they're going to have a 13% premium. And that's because both are facing relatively the same thing. Maybe it's just for the one with the more unobstructed view, it'll be slightly higher. But I don't think the range between the two stacks that are so similar will be 13%. So maybe they'll go up to about between here, 2.3 to 2.4. Now, that being said, is this price doable and okay for this area? Let's have a look. So for the 5 bedrooms, first you want to look at the new launch prices for the OCR. So if we look at OCR new launch 5 bedrooms within 500 meters of MRT, we can see the average price right now is about 3.5 million and the maximum has gone to 4.3. Now PSF wise also on average it is about 2,300, which we'll be able to get based on the starting range developer has given us. So to me, this price is still okay for the area, but you really have to look at it. So once it reaches the high floor, you need to see what is the quantum. Because to me, once it comes too close to 4 million, right now, out there in the market, more central area, there are 5 bedrooms that are very close to this price. So to me, I'd rather go for that option. But anything below that, this is still considerable in terms of pricing for the area. Next up, we have the 4 bedrooms. Now, there are quite a few different layouts for this with minor differences. So let's see if you can spot them as we go along. Now, the first will be 1,335 square feet. So for D1 and D2, they are the same size, just that there are minor space allocation differences when it comes to the foyer area. But what do you get with this layout? Now you have good sized common rooms that can at least fit a queen size bed. Now for this, there's no junior master suite, so you have a common bathroom over here and then your master bathroom. Now I do like the dining area. You can at least tuck in an 8-seater comfortably, and there's quite a spacious living area. For kitchen, again, you get a house shelter, wash closet, and I do like the glass feature here, which really opens up the space when you walk in. Now between the two, the size is the same, but only for D2 will you have external facing units, which is over here. Now for the rest of the 4 bedrooms, they're all going to be internal facing. So the starting price that the developer gave, which is 2,135 PSF, good chance that it will be this stack over here. Now moving on to the next biggest, which is 1,345 and 1,356. Now for this, again, they are very similar to what we just saw. So looking at D3 first, the layout is similar to 1,335, except we're going to have a larger foyer area. Again, internal facing 12 units. Now for D4, it is quite unique and a bit different because you have a proper tuck-in wardrobe over here, which gives a similar vibe to what you have for the 5 bedroom walk-in wardrobe. Now for this, there are only 12 units and also internal facing over here. Moving on to the largest of the 4 bedroom, which is the 1,400 over square feet layouts. So first up, we have 1,485 over here and then 1,496 over here. So what are you getting for this extra space? Now you're going to have a junior master with its own bathroom in addition to the other 2 previously. And also your living area, you can see it's a lot less tight than the smaller sizes. So it will be more spacious. Now because it's more spacious, they have put the dining in the middle. which, though there is more space, I really wish they didn't put it in front of the kitchen entrance because it makes it quite inconvenient. But looking at the space, you should still be able to walk around fine. Now, between DP2 as well as DP1, they are both quite similar, just again some differences when it comes to the foyer entrance. But do take note, now for this size of 4-bedroom, it is very important to look at the pricing. Be careful that it does not come too close to the 5-bedroom because we do want a safe buffer. Now, given the pricing of the starting 4-bedroom, this is what we estimate it will be. So if it goes up to 2,300, it will be about 3.4 million. So what will I prioritize for a 4-bedroom? Now, my first choice is going to be 1,356 square feet. Because this layout is a bit more unique, you have the walk-in wardrobe, but it still keeps the quantum very affordable in comparison to all the 4 bidders. Now, for the second choice, 1,355, similar as the 1,356, just that you do not have that walk-in wardrobe over there. And for my third choice, I would skip the larger 4 bedrooms altogether and go for the smaller 5-bedroom units. Now, why do I say this? Because if the quantum is so close between the low floor 5-bedroom and the larger 4-bedder, I would just top up a bit to go for the bigger size. Moving on to the 3 bedrooms. Now for this size, we're going to have 3 categories, which is the standard 3-bedroom, the premium 3-bedroom, as well as the 3-bedroom plus study. So starting off with the standard ones, we have 926 and 936 square feet. Now the main difference between them, you'll notice one is a dumbbell layout over here, whereas the other one is more of a traditional 3-bedroom layout. Now for both, there are pros and cons. So for the 926 dumbbell one, you have a deeper living room. So this is going to make it feel a bit bigger versus the traditional one, which has a shorter living room. Now the other thing to take note is that for the dumbbell layout, you don't have windows in your bathroom, but for the traditional one, you do have. So this definitely gives you more ventilation. Now, a little added bonus is there's also this window in the walkway. So this makes it feel brighter and not so dark. Now, some other differences also is the entrance. It's a bit deeper for 936 over here, whereas 926, you walk right in. Now, between the two, which would I prioritize? For me, I would still prioritize 936 first because it's a very traditional layout that we know already does well in the resale market here and is accepted. Whereas for dumbbell, even though it's more efficient in terms of space usage, it's not really everyone's cup of tea. So looking at the starting prices, the developer has given us 2,236 as the starting PSF, which would bring the quantum at about 2 million for the smaller one. So how acceptable is this for the future demographic buying into here? We'll talk about that in a little bit. Now moving on to the next layout, which is 947 square feet. Now do note that for 947, it is actually exactly the same on the inside as the one we just went through, just that their foyer area is a bit different throughout. Now, for all these layouts, it is key to understand how affordable it is for the people buying in next time. Now, as we saw, we are surrounded by a lot of BTOs. So how affordable is it for them to buy into here in the future? So to understand, let's look at the breakdown. So for those that have MOP, which is only Tampines Greenleaf so far, the rest have yet to MOP, which means that by the time that Parktown collects key, you have about 8,120 BTO units that will MOP and possibly be buying into your unit in the future. Now for Tampines Greenleaf, a 5-bedroom, they bought in at about 400k. Now today, their resale price has hit up to 900k. This means that when they sell it off, they're taking back about 500k in cash, and considering all the CPF payments they have made, they'll take back about 100k. So this means that in total, they have about 600k to work with for their down payment of their next unit. So assuming I take an average of 2.2 million based on the estimated price given to us, this means that with the 25% down payment at 550k and the buyer's stamp duty at 79k, they can down pay for this. They just need to top up a little bit more, and then it's pretty easy for them. They don't really have to touch much cash. Of course, if it's lower than 2.2, they may not even have to come up with any cash at all. So we can see from this that based on the resale BTOs in the area, that it's actually not very difficult to buy into the 3 bedrooms here. And of course, we have a huge demand pool in the future once the rest of the developments MOP as well. So that being said, with that in mind, which layout would I prioritize? For me, it'll still be the 936 because this layout is easily acceptable for the market here, and it also keeps the quantum as low as possible. Of course, this is really going to depend on your queue number because I feel this layout is actually going to go first for the 3 bedrooms. So you do want to strategize and prioritize depending on the price after that. Now let's look at the 3 bedroom premium. So we'll have 1066 square feet as the starting size. Now what you're getting in addition compared to the 3 smaller ones we just looked at. You'll get a house shelter which will give you more storage as well as a yard and wash closet. Now if you look at all 3 of these, they are actually the exact same size, just that the space allocation has some minor differences when it comes to the foyer. Now between the 3, I would still prioritize this one, and that's because of the entrance. Now when you come in, you cannot directly look into the unit, so this is going to give you a bit more privacy versus the other 2 over here. Now we have another 3 layouts of 1066 square feet. Again, the inside is the same, just that you have some differences in the foyer entrance. And of course with this 3, again similar to the previous one we just saw, it's going to give you a bit more privacy, so I might prioritize them. So we have one more layout for 1076 square feet, so it's a bit bigger. And this is because, again, the foyer space is a bit bigger. So if you notice for the 3 bedroom premium, the layouts are actually very similar with only minor differences in the foyer area. So it's really going to come down to knowing which facing and which floor to choose, which I will run through in a bit. Now we also have 1055, but this, just to take note, there's only 1 unit, so it is quite negligible. So let's look at the top choices for the 3 bedroom premium. So just now when we were looking at Botanic at Bali earlier, we noticed that there's a premium of about 5% plus between the premium facing internally and the outward one. Now if it is 5% here or less, I would say go for the internal one because 5% is quite a common premium for mid-rise in the market, so it shouldn't be too hard to recover back when you hit the resale. However, if it is more than 5%, then I would actually prioritize the external road-facing units first before going for the internal one. And the specs that I've listed here is the order that I would prioritize them. So do keep note of that. And also take note of how close your pricing is to the 3 bedroom study. If it gets too close, I would just go for a lower floor 3 bedroom study versus a very high floor 3 bedroom. Which brings us to our 3 bedroom study. So it's going to start at 1163 square feet. And what you're going to get is, in addition to everything at a 3 bedroom premium, the study over here. Now, I really do like the way they have done up the study and where they position it. Now, why do I say that? So number one, you have a full length window over here. It's not so much like an afterthought study where you tuck in one corner that is just darkness. Now, in addition to that, because of where it's positioned, you have a few options in terms of what you can use it for. So number one, of course, you can use it as a study. Now, number two, this could even be a very small bedroom. Number three, if you want to use it for storage, you definitely can. And number four, because it is so near the master, this can even be a walk-in wardrobe. Now, between these two, again, do take note. And as we will see with the later layouts of 3 bedroom plus study, just like the premium, they are very similar on the inside, just differences with the foyer area. So for these two, it's just the foyer that will be different. But for CPS1 over here, it will be internal facing, whereas for this one, it will be internal and external. So what do you need to take note of in terms of the 3 plus study and what to choose? It will be a lot on the pricing, how close it is to the 4 bedroom. So if we look at the even larger square feet, 1173 square feet and 1184 square feet, again, on the inside, it's very similar, but because of the larger foyer area, though this gives you more privacy, it really brings up the quantum. So if we look at the very highest, if we estimate 13% for, again, premium to non-premium facing, this brings the quantum close to 2.8, which is very, very close to the starting price of the 4 bedroom. So if the units left for 3 bedroom plus study at the point of time that you want to get is only in this range, then I would just top up a bit to go for the 4 bedroom bigger one. Moving on to the 2 bedrooms, which has the largest number of units at Parktown. Now, there are 3 categories similar to the 3 bedroom, where you have the 2 bed 1 bath, the 2 bed premium, as well as the 2 bed plus study. So diving right into our 2 bed 1 bath, we have 592 square feet for all 3 layouts. Now, all 3 of them are very similar. Now, you have a dumbbell style layout with open concept kitchen, as well as 2 good bedrooms and of course 1 bathroom over here. Now, for all 3, They are very similar except for their external facade will differ a bit. Now you can see for this layout is a bit less recessed for the AC latch versus this, but internally it's going to feel the same. So the developer has given us the starting price at 1.33 million over here. Now again, if we take that 13% for the lowest floor outer facing versus inner facing highest floor, that will bring the highest unit to 1.48 million. Now, of course, for 2-bed 1-bath, we always want to consider if the rental number makes sense with the quantum that we are entering. And we'll go through that once we have looked at the 2-bed 2-bath layouts as well. So going into the 2-bed premiums, there are 5 layouts for this. Now, 4 of them are very similar, but there is one that I really like, which I'll go through in a bit. Now, for the 4, you can see they are all dumbbell layouts. Again, I want to say first, I want to give a bonus to the developer for having an enclosable kitchen. Now, y'all know I love an enclosable kitchen, especially for a 2-bedroom, because of course it is much more functional, especially for somewhere like Tampines, where it's not just mainly purchased for rental when it comes to 2-bedroom. You have a large own stay crowd as well. This will definitely be a bonus. Now, the internal size for all 4 layouts are similar at 678 square feet. Now, you're just going to see differences in how the bathroom and the kitchen is placed. So, for example, this is right next to each other, whereas this one is a bit staggered. And this all comes down to how the entrance is positioned as well. So overall, these 4 very similar. Now, the next layout that I'm going to share for 2-bed premium is 721 square feet. And this one is more of a traditional 2-bedder where you have the 2 rooms tucked at the side, of course, your enclosable kitchen again, and a proper dining area. Now, for this, you only have 61 units. And if you enter the resale market in the future, it will definitely help you stand out to be more outstanding because most other layouts in Parktown are dumbbell for 2-bedroom. Now, if we estimate based off the PSF given for starting 2-bed 1-bath, when we bring it down to 2-bed premium, is what we predict it will be. Starting from that will be about 1.55 all the way to about 1.73. So lastly, we have the 2-bed plus study, which is very similar to the 2-bed 2-bath, except you have a study here. And this size is 764 square feet. So it is very big and even very close to the size of some 3-bedrooms in post-Harmo developments. So definitely very comfortable for own stay. But for 2-bed plus study, usually I would advise people that are buying, if you can top up a bit, to go for a 3-bedroom. Now, the reason for this is the rental element is also important for 2-bedrooms. And usually the rental yield is a lot better for smaller size like 2-bed 1-bath and 2-bed 2-bath. So this really depends on what you're prioritizing. But if it is for rental, I will go for the smaller units first. So that brings us to the question. For rental, how is this being an integrated development going to impact the rental price? Now for you, just think about it. How much are you willing to pay more to just have the MRT and mall downstairs? We'll take a look at that in a bit. Now the other thing we want to compare is the 2-bed 1-bath versus the 2-bed 2-bath. So there's always this conception that 2-bed 1-bath has better rental yield. Let's have a look if that is true as well. So first, let's look at the integrated question. Now let's take Treasure at Tampines, which is the newest non-integrated development in the area. Now you can see for the 2-bed 2-bath, the rental goes at about 3,001 all the way to 3,006. So let's take the average at about 3.2 to 3.3K per month. Now we go to the nearest integrated development. There are so few in the east, which is Bedok Residence. Now for their 2-bed 2-bath, before we go into the price, you might notice that the size is a bit bigger at 800 to 700, 800. But if you notice that even for the 2 sizes, there are no differences in the rental. They are quite similar. I can get 4,004 for 700 to 800 square feet. I can also get that for 800 to 900 square feet. So here, the price is the more important factor. Now, if we compare the rental, which is on average at Bedok Residence, I would say about 4.3K per month. That brings the premium you're paying for renting an integrated development to about 1K. So how does this impact our rental? Let's have a look also. Next, first we want to see what is the difference in rental for 2-bed 1-bath versus 2-bed 2-bath. So why are we looking at all these premiums? It is important to know so that we can gauge what the rental is for Parktown in the future, and then we can understand what is a good price to enter to have a good rental yield and a good exit price. So for 2-bed 2-bath at Treasures, as we saw just now, it's about 3.2 to to 3.3K per month. Now for 2 bed 1 bath, it is about 3,001 to 3,300. So I would say on average it's about, let's say, 3,001. So you can see the difference between a 2 bed 1 bath versus a 2 bed 2 bath in rental is maybe about $100 to $200. So coming back to Parktown, now we know integrated can fetch about 1,000 more, and then we know that 2 bed 2 bath is about 200 more in terms of rental. Let's put that on Parktown. So for Parktown 2 bed 1 bath, assuming charges 3.2K, not integrated, we add 1K for integrated. That means that the rental is about 4,200 per month. Now, assuming the starting price entry at 1.33 million for a 2 bed 1 bath, this means your rental yield is at 3.7%, which is really decent. Now, moving off to the 2 bed 2 bath, again, we estimate 200 more for a 2 bed 2 bath. That means the rental is about 4,400, and with the starting price of about 1.55, this brings the rental yield to 3.4%. So looking at the two, we can see that for rental yield, 2 bed 1 bath is a better option to prioritize in this case. But as always, do keep in mind that 2 bed 1 bath will be able to get a better rental yield because it is smaller. But usually in the resale market, when you are selling, it might take a bit longer. So you need to buffer that timeline in as well if you choose to go for this. Now, between the 2 bedrooms, before we move to the 1 bedroom, just be very aware of the price across the 3 categories as well. For example, if a high floor 2 bed 2 bath price comes very close to a low floor 2 bed plus study, then you might want to go for the 2 bed plus study. Vice versa, for 2 bed 1 bath, if it gets very close to the 2 bed 2 bath, go for the 2 bed 2 bath. So you want to know what are the price differences between the different sizes in 2 bedroom as well. Lastly, we have the 1 bedrooms. So for 1 bedrooms at Parktown, there are several layouts, but most of them only have 1 or a few units. So we'll be focusing on the main layout that is the most common, 506 square feet. So this is a 1 plus study where you have the study in the middle, your master here, as well as a good size open kitchen, dining, and then your living over here. Now for this, you're going to have mainly external facing with a few internal as well. So the starting price given for a 1 bedroom at Parktown is 2,312. So if we estimate that with the main size 506, that brings your quantum to about 1,169. Now for 1,169, this means the highest 13% added will be a 1.315. So how does this impact our rental yield? Because for 1 bedroom, definitely a large portion is buying for investment. So it's very important for us to look at the numbers. So again, if we take Treasures, which is a non-integrated, their average rental for a 1 bedroom is between 2,700 to 3,300. So on average, I would say it's about 2,009 to 3,000 per month. Now for the integrated one, Bedok Residence, the average rental for a 1 bedroom over there is between 3.3 to 3.9. So again, we take on average about, let's say, 3.7K. Okay, so using this, how do we know what is the rental yield? If we break it down, now this one here should be 1.169. Now if we break it down, adding the premium for integrated, which will be 3,700 a month, and buy in at 1.169, this brings our rental yield to 3.7%, which is very decent for rental. However, I would caution to say the downside for a 1 bedroom here is that the quantum is quite a bit higher than what you can choose for resale market nearby. So do keep mentally in mind that if you want to sell this unit later on, after renting it for a while, you will need some time in order to achieve the price that you want. We have come to the end of this video after going through so many layouts. Now do note the important dates for Parktown, which I've listed above. If you would like to book a show flat appointment, or if you have any questions regarding a certain unit type or what the pricing might be like, you're welcome to reach out to me at the listed contact. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to this channel and I'll catch you all next time.